There we go. We're live, Beena.
Hello and welcome to Moreness-Culture. Good morning, Sil. Good morning, Grain. And good morning, everyone who is going to join us live and will watch us recorded later. You all are most welcome to the Moreness-Culture and the Moreness space we have created for you. This is the place where you can be not only yourself but can be more than what your usual
Yes, yes,
conventional self
yes,
is. This is something where you can
yes.
exercise your moreness, you can extract moreness and extract value. So today's thought, while Sil is sharing all these things, how we are doing things. This is something, yes, it's still a mystery for many, because why we are doing this thing, like, okay, why we were doing lives, why we are doing the TV show, why we are doing we were doing the podcast. Of course, I was just a guest a couple of times, but still was a regular guest there, and he was doing a podcast with the celebrity interviewer Jill Nicolini, and
Oh,
this is the question many people ask, that okay, maybe it is okay just to promote yourself, maybe it is because just Sil is in a great habit of advising other people, which is okay. Yes, one of our friend also said that, which is like, okay, yes, but you always give
no,
advice.
no,
but
no,
but
no.
that was something like, okay, it was a reminder for us
Yeah,
to be more precise and more clear in our communication.
yeah,
Again, I would say that it is very difficult to communicate something out of your awareness.
yes,
Moreness, unfortunately,
yes.
is out of awareness, from for all of us. Okay, yes, at some point I was, of
Yeah.
course, also always there, and it's not a stagnant thing. It is like, okay, it always changes. If you are not very deliberate, you can lose again, and then you have to again deliberately be in that mindset, be in that way of being. So then you can acquire moreness, you can
Yeah,
actually
yeah.
experience, and you can understand moreness. So the struggle is not in the perception, but the struggle is in communication, and communicating something which you haven't seen. I still
Yes.
remember that my granny used to give us like, okay, tell us
It's not just
stories.
not seen, but outside of your conception, outside of your imagination,
Yes,
outside
yes,
of your belief, outside of your
yes.
expectation.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. Okay, so I'm just making it a bit simple, that okay, it is very difficult to communicate something which you have
yeah,
never seen or experienced or understand before. My granny used to tell us bedtime stories whenever we go to her house. And one of the stories was, it was a fun story, that a blind man once asking that what is, and then he was, of course, a beggar, so he'd never tasted the rice pudding before, ever. So he asked one of his friend that wherever you are, and he says, "Okay, I was at some point, someone's house, and they gave me. They were very generous, and they treated me with rice pudding, and it was very sweet, and it was beautiful, and all that." And the blind man, like a by birth blind man, he asked like, "Okay, why it was you said that? Okay, it was beautiful." He says, "Because it was white, and it was like wow, like a moon." And he says, "But what is white?" And then the struggle start, because the man has to explain something white and why white is beautiful to him, to a person who never actually see any color. And that was a struggle. So he was like, okay, oh, the white is like this and white is like that. And the end thing was, then he says, okay, a white is like a swan. And he says, okay, but what is swan? And then he just tried to
yeah.
to uh,
There's no frame of
make,
reference. There's no frame
yeah,
of
so he
reference.
tried to the friend tried to make his hand like a swan, and then say, okay, look, touch it, and then you will understand what swan is. And then the blind man, when he touched that hand, the way he was trying to make it like look like a swan, he says, then it's a terrible thing. He says, why? Because it is hard to swallow. It's so twisted.
Wow.
So
Communication, exactly. It's what we
exactly,
were
and
talking about
communicating
earlier.
something, communicating
Communication.
something which other people or okay anyone who never actually experienced it, it is completely out of their awareness. It's so difficult because the whole rigmarole, and after that he says that then
Mm.
it's a terrible thing to eat because it's so
Yeah.
curved. How you can eat something like that?
How can you swallow that? Right, right.
So the something is
Brilliant.
started with the rice pudding and ends up with like no, it's a terrible thing.
Mm.
and
Wow.
and no
Very good.
one was at fault because for the blind man by birth,
Correct.
uh,
Correct.
this is something like yes because but for the person who was saying that because he was also a beggar, so for him having something beautiful presented in a nice way, decorated white, and then because
Yeah.
in Asia, the traditionally the way they decorate those white rice pudding bowls is with silver, what they call it, silver coat or like no, something
I don't
silver.
know. Yeah.
Okay,
Silver,
anyway,
yeah.
something silver, and then of course some saffron petal here and there, and pistachios and almonds and other things. So it is a beautiful thing. They make it beautiful. Sometimes rose petal,
Mm.
sugar coated rose petals on that. So what he was trying to say, he was trying to share the moreness, that it was not just a sweet thing they just gave me. They presented it was so
Yeah.
beautiful. It was white. It was sparkling because it was a rice pudding. So he was trying to share moreness of that thing, of that gesture. But for the person who never experienced colors, he was stuck into that what white looks like. And he ended up saying that, okay, look like a swan. He gave a lot of examples. I don't have time to actually share all those things. It was fun. But the end
Why?
part
Why? Why?
was super funny for us as a kid. That when he said, then it's a terrible thing to have. How can I eat this thing?
Interesting.
It's twisted. So,
Interesting.
and
Interesting.
this is
Interesting.
exactly same for the mourners thing
Yes.
because
Yes.
it
More
is
this
it
is
is really
difficult to
difficult.
communicate because it's a
Exactly,
different paradigm. See, that was the paradigm shift for the blind man and the visual. You're in a
exactly,
different paradigm. There's no visual there. You
exactly,
can't say, oh, it looks like a swan. You've never seen a swan. And beside
mm,
which, it's the color of the swan, not the shape of
exactly.
the swan. So,
Yes,
also, like
but he
really,
was a
yeah,
but of course because of his limitations, the blind man was stuck to the shape to understand the shape. He was not able to
right,
understand the color.
right,
And
right,
this is
right.
something we need to understand that we are trying to communicate. Still, you have a background music, I guess? Yes.
Oh, I must turn that off. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So this is something, it's a limitation. Okay, we are trying to remedy this as much as we can, but we all need to understand it is something very unique.
Yeah,
Trying to make something like, sorry, share something which is out of awareness is difficult because what we are using as
yeah,
example
yeah, yeah,
are not the mourners, but we are trying to, because there is no other way to share that. Because we say
yeah,
that, okay, it
yeah,
is like
yeah,
goodness, but it is
yeah,
connected to goodness, not
yeah,
entirely goodness.
yeah,
Okay, it is something, a gesture, but not only gesture, it is more than that. And then what we are sharing is our usual examples. And then people say, but it is
yeah,
something like, I know, okay, it's not quality,
ah,
it's not quality only, it's quantity also, okay, but not
yeah,
quantity
yeah.
only. So there's so many things. And
Yep.
I was sharing with Sil that I was trying to listen to some audio book about surrender, and the
Yeah,
guy
yeah,
was sorry, I feel very disappointed with that because that guy was trying to communicate what surrender is, but the way he was doing was a roundabout way by telling what is not surrendering. Because and then my mind was continuously getting this thing. No, if you this is something you assume, no, not this thing. Surrender is something else. Then what is surrender? But I was a bit harsh with my judgment about him
oh,
using uh, negative concepts about like, okay, what is not surrender? Because he was struggling with communication.
yeah.
He was trying to communicate something, but he was struggling with that. And that is something, okay, yes,
Very cool,
you
Beena.
can
Very cool.
share about moreness, sorry, surrender, but
Yeah,
moreness, Moreness is a bit
Yeah,
different. It's a different case.
yeah,
It's a
yeah,
different case because it
yeah.
is
So just
something
be
out of our
aware,
lives.
right?
Yes.
Right. So just be aware that what we are sharing is about moreness, and there's a lot of moreness in this sharing about moreness, and specifically sharing about moreness culture. We're not giving advice, we're sharing. Yes, much of what we're sharing is valuable. That's why we're sharing it. It's moreness. But it's not given as advice. It's just shared. If you wish to use it, that's up to you. Fine. It's your choice. We're not saying advice is you must do this, you should do this. That's advice. You're telling people. We don't tell, we share. A very different understanding underneath it, right? Very, very important also. All right, Bina, let's go and continue our reading. Carlos is in a conversation with Don Juan um, about will, yeah, capital W will, and this is an elucidation and a sharing by Don Juan of what will is. Okay, and we've already read some, and we're just going to continue. Right? Can you read, Bina?
It's blur, but let me try. Okay, it is getting better. Yes.
Yeah, from yeah,
I asked
and then
him
I'll
if,
read Don Juan.
okay,
Oh, go
I
ahead.
asked him if will was a sixth sense. He said it was rather a relation between ourselves and the perceived world. I suggested that we halt so I could take notes. He laughed and kept on walking. He did not make me leave that night. And the next day, after eating breakfast, he himself brought up the subject of will. What
What
you
you
yourself,
yourself call will is character and strong disposition. What a sorcerer calls will is a force that comes from within and attaches itself to the world out there. It comes out through the belly, right here, where the luminous fibers are.
he rubbed his navel point to point out the area.
I say that it comes out through here because one can feel it coming out. Yes, I felt it coming out.
Wow. Okay.
I felt
Why
it
do you?
only. I didn't perceive it. I just felt it. But yeah,
Ah, okay. Why do you call it will?
I don't call it anything. My benefactor called it well, and other people of knowledge call it well.
Yesterday you said that one can perceive the world with the senses as well as with the will. How is that possible?
An average man can grab the things of the world only with his hands or his eyes or his ears. Grab in inverted commas, right? But a sorcerer or a person of knowledge can grab them also with his nose or his tongue or his will, especially with their will. I cannot really describe how it is done, but you yourself, for instance, cannot describe to me how you hear. It happens that I'm also capable of hearing, so we can talk about what we hear, but not about how we hear. A sorcerer uses his will. A sorcerer uses their will to perceive the world. That perceiving, however, is not like learning. When we look at the world or when we hear it, we have the impression that it is out there and that it is real. When we perceive the world with our will, we know that out it is not as out there or as real as we think. Okay, this is a very, very important point here. Will you read it again, please, Bina? I actually won't be able to. Hold on. I want to add this to our quote file. Yeah, all right. This is a
Okay.
very, very important point. Yeah,
Okay.
because it goes to understanding reality, right? And this is a very nice elucidation of understanding the underlying deeper perception of reality, more from like on a quantum physics level, right? And that's important because it's not a new idea. This has been around, all is mind. It's a very old Vedic idea, right? Buddhists especially have all of this. Right? All is mind. Yeah, Maya. It's all illusion, right? It's a very,
Yes.
very old, ancient ideas. But here Don Juan is explaining it and elucidating it in a way that's a little bit better. So you please read that. I know it's Don Juan saying it, but I just want
No,
to
it's
go
okay.
over this again. Yeah.
Okay. An average man can grab the things of the world only with his hands, or his eyes, or his ears. But a sorcerer can grab them also with his nose, or his tongue, or his will, especially with his will. I cannot really describe how it is done, but you yourself, for instance,
Pause there 1 second, Bina. Pause there 1 second.
mhm,
Zacateca. Remember Don Juan's friend Zacateca, the dancer?
uh-huh,
Remember?
yes,
He grabbed Carlos with his dancing. He danced
oh,
Carlos, remember? Remember? Don Juan said he danced
mm,
you. And I was like, huh? Well, he danced Carlos through his dancing. He grabbed a perception of Carlos to what's going on with you, right? So he used his dancing as this mechanism to grab, in inverted commas, to apprehend or comprehend. Perceive is the best way to perceive Carlos, to know Carlos, not just perceive as in looking or hearing, but to perceive, to know Carlos's essence, right?
mm,
Perceive, capital P, perceive. So, his will probably was involved in that too, right? All of it. Yeah.
oh yes. I
And here
cannot
we
really
get to your
dis-
story about the white swan, about the pudding, the rice pudding. Yeah, it's the same now. Coming
Yes.
up. It always amazes me how Venus openings connect later back to what we're going to share. Bina has no idea what's coming, but it's just so appropriate. It's
Oh
always
yes.
magical, always magical. Very, very powerful.
Okay, shall we continue?
Yes, please. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I cannot really describe how it is done, but you yourself, for instance, cannot describe to me how you hear. It happens that I'm also capable of hearing. So we can talk about what we hear, but not about how we hear. A sorcerer uses his will to perceive the world. That perceiving, however, is not like hearing. When we look at the world or when we hear it, we have the impression that it is out there and that it is real. When we perceive the world with our will, we know that it is not as out there or as real as we think. Ah,
See, this is very powerful. That, in other words, the world. This is my quote that I quote repeatedly. It's a very important quote. It's part of Moreness-Culture, Way-Of-Impeccability, and that is the world does not work the way we think it does. Right? This is Don
the
Juan saying
world,
the same thing.
the
The
world,
world, yeah, the world does not work the way we think it does. In other
because
words, it's not as out there or as real as we think. Yeah,
okay,
it's
yes,
different. There's a lot of difference to it. Yeah.
I heard you said that the will does not work the way we assume it does.
Oh, no, no, no. World, the world. Because look, what Don Juan is saying, when we perceive the world with our
Yes,
will, world does not work the way we think it does. When we use our will, we get to see the difference. We get to perceive
yes,
the difference. Yeah?
yes,
Yeah. Well, at
yes,
least when we use our will as part of this interaction with the world, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Is will the same as seeing? No.
No. I'll continue again. I just wanted you to
Okay,
read that part again.
okay.
No, will is a force, a power. Perceiving is not a force. Now, for those that are catching up with us here, don't know, we are changing seeing to perceiving because Don Juan later on in the books, much way down the road, he says seeing is not a good term to use for this because it makes us think it's an issue of the eyes when it's not. And just somebody way back when did this and he's just perpetuating it. We don't want to do this. So we call it perceiving, which is rightly the term for it, right? Capital P perceiving also. Right? Perceiving is not a force, but rather a way of getting through things. A sorcerer may have a strong will, and yet they may not perceive, which means that only a person of knowledge perceives the world with his senses, with their senses, and with their will, and also with their perceiving. That's you. Keep going, Beena. Where'd you go? Oh, you muted. You muted. You muted. You muted.
Sorry, sorry. Okay, okay. Still where it is. Don Juan was gone.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no. I told
Okay.
him after that.
I told him that I was more confused than ever about how to use my will to forget the guardian. That statement and my mood of perplexity seemed to delight him.
Mm. Interesting. Interesting. All right. I've told you that when you talk, you only get confused, which is true. Carlos talking confuses him because he doesn't think things through. He wants those easy explanations. But at least now you know you are waiting for your will. You still don't know what it is or how it could happen to you. So watch carefully everything you do. The very thing that could help you develop your will is amidst all the little things that you do. And we do notice this, Beena. We haven't specifically applied it to will necessarily, we connect it to intent. But we do notice those little things on a regular basis, right? We just had an example today.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And that was like really, you feel that because we were talking about communication. I'm not going to into the specifics,
Yeah,
but we were talking about communication. And it was like a sadness that, okay, communication is a very haphazard business and people assume
right.
things, okay, and which is not the intent and not being said in that way. And that was right there. And it also, as a side note, Sil has a question that, okay, yeah, something is happening, that question being answered immediately, precisely, in a very clear and
Exactly.
anomalous way. So not only that it was
Exactly.
answered the specific question, but
Yeah.
also it clears up that your communication is not bad because you were communicating very clearly with the universe. And that was like,
Correct.
wow.
Correct. Correct.
So not
Correct.
just one, but two immediately.
Yes.
We get this thing,
Yes.
and that was really
Yes.
profound. So yes, yes.
Yeah. 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 So hello to all the TikTokers. So very cool. See you joining there. Very cool. Hello, hello. Yeah. All right. Please
Okay.
keep
Don
going.
Juan
Where
was
were
gone.
we? Where were we?
Yes,
Oh,
Don Juan was
yeah.
gone all morning. He returned in the early afternoon with a bundle of dry plants. He signaled me with his head to help him, and we worked in complete silence for hours. Sorting the plants, when we finished, we sat down to rest, and he smiled at me benevolently. Benevolently.
Benevolently.
Benevolently.
Benevolently.
Thank you. Benevolently, 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 benevolently. Okay, I said to
There you
him in
go.
a very I said to him in a serious manner, in a very serious manner, that I had been reading my notes and I still could not understand what being a warrior entailed or what the idea of will meant.
Will is not an idea.
This was the first time he had spoken to me the whole day. After a long pause, he continued.
We are different, you and I. Our characters are not alike. Your nature is more violent than mine. When I was your age, I was not violent but mean. You are the opposite. My benefactor was like that. He would have been perfectly suited to be your teacher. He was a great sorcerer, but he did not perceive, not in the way I perceive or the way Gennaro perceives. I understand the world and live guided by my perceiving. My benefactor, on the other hand, had to live as a warrior. If a person perceives, they don't have to live like a warrior or anything else. For they can perceive things as they really are and direct their life accordingly. But, considering your character, I would say that you may never learn to perceive, in which case you will have to live your entire life as a warrior. My benefactor said that when a man embarks on the path of sorcery, the path of knowledge, they become aware. Sorry, let me read it again. My benefactor said that when a person, again, we are trying to not perpetuate the default inadvertent misogyny of using the masculine, right? My benefactor said that when a person embarks on the paths of sorcery or knowledge, they become aware in a gradual manner that ordinary life has been forever left behind. This is a very important sentence. Yeah. All right, we'll come back to it. I want to repeat this, right? Let me just start again here. My benefactor said that when a person embarks on the paths of knowledge or sorcery, they become aware in a gradual manner that ordinary life has been forever left behind, that knowledge is indeed a frightening affair, that the means of the ordinary world are no longer a buffer for them, and that they must adopt a new way of life if they are going to survive. The first thing they ought to do at that point is to want to become a warrior, a very important step and decision. The frightening nature of knowledge leaves one no alternative but to become a warrior. This is the entire point and purpose of Way of Impeccability. Also, it is from my personal point of view, and considering all of my expertise on this matter and the field, I feel, regardless of whether you learn to see or not, I feel that you first need to live and be and understand and want to be a warrior, because that gives you the solid foundation that whether or not you see or not, you're okay. Yes? And to not rely on things that are external, that are additive, yeah, like the perceiving. Yes, I feel that having this solid foundation that's in you, the core, means that you are doing it because you see the sense of it, not that you're being told it is sensible. Yes, the perceiving can be a fantastic addition on top of this, but first you need to have that core. This is my personal point of view. And I feel that as we go later on through the books, we'll see, yeah, Don Juan is saying it's kind of either or. Yeah. But Don Juan does live like a warrior. Yeah. He does live impeccably. And I feel that it's not made clear here. At least in this, I don't think Don Juan is seeing the clarity of how important it is, even if you can see. He's saying you can not live like a warrior and perceive, right? And that will. I don't think this is actually true. And later on, if we look at this, we'll see how Don Juan. This is not really an accurate point of his own perspectives, as we'll see later on in the works. But regardless. This to me is absolutely important, which is why it's important to be a warrior first for everything. All of the other mechanisms, mescalito, the mushrooms, whatever, all of these things, they all are potentially exceedingly problematic if you do not have, well, impeccability, which is to live like a warrior, is to be impeccable. That's what it's all about, right? I mean, in Way of Impeccability, we call it spirit warrior rather than warrior, to make it a little bit more clear what warrior means, right? A spirit warrior is not somebody who's using violence, right? And Don Juan doesn't mean violence here either. Don Juan is saying a warrior to imply impeccability and integrity and discipline and all of these other characters, right? Qualities. But a spirit warrior, that becomes a little bit more clear, right? So it's a very, very key point of understanding here, right? That Don Juan's benefactor, the now Julian, if you want to get specific, we'll find out his name later, did not perceive. And it's okay, you don't have to. Don Juan says it's a great benefit, right? And you can do without it, but it's still, you have to be the warrior, right? And I was making this point clear here because I feel Don Juan is not clearly expressing how important it is to be a warrior. Yeah, well, that's just me. So I want to read this paragraph again, right? Beena, are you with me? You feel the same way in terms of the, I'm assuming,
Yes,
about the
yes,
necessity and
yes.
importance of Way of Impeccability, right? Which, let's just take the whole word warrior right out of it, because some people struggle with that. But impeccability is crucial. And part of it's not just impeccability itself, but way of impeccability, which includes more than just being impeccable. It's got other tools like thinking things through to the end, being self reliant, understanding what capital T trust is, perspective shifting to multiple perspectives, right? Association management, All of these are tools which make us competent as sentient beings, regardless of what other skills we are. They are attainable to anybody, whether you learn to perceive or not, whether you have access to medicine plants or other things, whatever, right? None of that is needed if you have way of impeccability. Yeah, that's very important. I mean, Don Juan's benefactor, Julian, he was a very peculiar fellow. Yes, we'll see later on, right? But regardless of all his peculiarities and predilections and all sorts of weird stuff, he was always impeccable in what he did. He may have gone to peculiar mechanisms for doing it, but his intent, right, always impeccable. All right, so we'll see that later on. It's very important. All right, let's read this again. We are
Yeah,
different, you and
okay.
I.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Beena, please.
Yes,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
just want to ask you because what I'm understanding from so far with Don Juan and Carlos and what he's saying, because it's like a yin yang energy, and it's like okay, the masculine and the feminine
Kind
energy.
of. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
because it is more, one is more action oriented, that you are a warrior, that you have to actually uh, do things, the doing by like okay, using your senses and
Yeah,
utilize them,
yeah,
and perceiving
yeah.
is that okay, go beyond those senses
Right,
and
right.
just perceive
Go
and
in
let it
depth.
come to
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
So
yeah.
this is something
Right.
kind of the same, but it's still what Don Juan is missing here is the balance universe has created. Something
Correct.
is
Correct.
is
Correct.
more action oriented, but also we need
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Now, keep in mind,
It is universe
Don
way.
Juan's right. Don Juan is not communicating to us.
Hmm.
He's communicating to Carlos. We must
Oh.
never forget that Don Juan's communications are purpose driven.
Hmm.
Carlos
Okay.
is like a child here relative to the. I mean, I'm not being negative towards Carlos, but Carlos is ignorant. I mean, he's literally like a child relative to this massive sophistication, like a child. And Don Juan is trying to explain brain surgery to him, so he has to say things that are
Hmm.
appropriate to Carlos's psychology. And what he's doing here, why he is making this separation between perceiving and being a warrior, because Carlos doesn't yet grasp the importance of being a warrior. Yeah. In the next book, we are going to see how Carlos goes back and then clicks onto it, right? And the next book, I think, is published in 1973, I think. And here we are in book two, and this came out, I don't know, book one was in 69, I think, or 68. And this one is 70 or 71. So it takes Carlos a couple of years. But from at this point in time, Carlos and Don Juan have known each other and been together for 8, 9, 10 years. Or I don't know what year we're in, right? A
Hmm.
long time, right? I think we're still in 69, right? So
Hmm.
9 years he's known Don Juan. And he's still, in 9 years' time, he has not grasped all that Don Juan has shared to him about being a warrior. And when we go back into book three, we go over all those years. And Carlos now takes his notes and he says, oh, I missed all this. And he emphasizes this. So for 9 years, Carlos has not grasped about beingness. Also, Don Juan knows that as a child, psychology, Carlos is a bit flighty in a way. His motivation is a bit suspect. He kind of gives up easily. And Don Juan is concerned that if Carlos does not succeed in perceiving, that he gives the whole thing up. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
Yes.
Right? He gives up the entire apprenticeship. And he's saying, no, don't worry about it. If you don't learn to perceive, is guarding against Carlos being disappointed and being unmotivated. If you don't learn to perceive, it's okay. You can be like my benefactor. He brings in his benefactor specifically here now. Oh, here's an example of somebody who didn't perceive, and well, he taught me. Oh, in Carlos's world, he thinks the teacher always is more than the student. In Don Juan's lineage, it's the other way around. There's a constant evolution, right? the student
Wow.
becomes more than the teacher typically, right? Or at least is progressing
Mm,
further, right? And at the point of the teacher departing, at that point the student knows what the benefactor knew, the teacher knew, and takes it further, right? So the student always ends up slightly further. Okay. Very important to understand. But my main point is if we understand this purpose driven communication from Don Juan, we
mm,
understand the separation between perceiving and being a warrior as like an either or, right?
mm,
They actually have to both go together. But he's making sure that Carlos does not become unmotivated and give the whole thing up. Because again, 9 years. And Carlos has not yet grasped this that Don Juan has been communicating to him about a warrior. And when we see in the next book, we say, "Oh my goodness, how did Carlos miss all of this?" It's mind blowing. It's mind blowing, especially for me personally, because right in the very first book, it was the warrior part, the impeccability parts, not all the other stuff. And there are very few of them. That's what grabbed me and made me interested. The rest, all the power plant stuff, and it's like, all right, whatever. It was interesting, very, very interesting, but that's not what made me read further. Anyway, it was the knowledge, the wisdom really, and the practicality of that, the practical wisdom, the usability. That's what grabbed me. Yeah, as it resonated with what I was doing. Anyway, all right, Beena, will you read the whole thing, please? It just the whole, and then I'll just continue. I just want to hear it, and I want you to read it so that you connect to it more as well, right? I
okay,
mean, I'm
from the
familiar
beginning,
with it.
we are different.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay. We are different, you and I. Our characters are not alike. Your nature is more violent than mine. When I was your age, I was not violent, but mean. You are the opposite. My benefactor was like that. He would have been perfectly suited to be your teacher. He was a great sorcerer, but he did not perceive, not the way I perceive or the way Gennaro perceive. I understand the world and live guided by my perceiving. My benefactor, on the other hand, had to live as a warrior. If a person perceive, he doesn't have to live like a warrior or like anything else, for they can perceive things as they really are and direct their life accordingly. But considering your character, I would say that you may never learn to perceive, in which case you will have to live your entire life like a warrior. My
Real
benefit,
quick here before you continue, Avina,
yes,
that I would
yes,
say that you may never learn to perceive. Carlos has got a stubborn, obstinate side to him, and when challenged, he rises to it. Yeah. So
hmm,
again, this is sophisticated psychology of leveraging and cueing Carlos, right? So where he says you may never, I would say that you may never learn to see. Oh, really? I'll show you. Right? That's Carlos. Yeah. Are you with me? You agree or no?
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. I mean, not that you need to agree, but I mean, you see my point.
No,
Yeah.
no, no,
I
no,
mean,
no. I understand your point
I,
because
right,
the way
right,
Carlos
right.
is. So yes, I understand that.
Exactly, exactly. But I'm making the point that we need to, and this is why the capital R reading. We need to absolutely always be paying attention to intent. And Don Juan's intent is his mandate with Carlos. So he has this purpose driven communication when it comes to Carlos. So what he says may not exactly always be accurate, but it is absolutely precisely accurate according to his intent, his mandate from the universe. His mandate is the universe is to teach Carlos. Carlos is a difficult student. It's 9 years and he hasn't clicked onto this warrior stuff. This is not the first time that we're hearing about warrior. I mean, at least it's focused on now. But it's been 9 years already, right? And now Carlos is only mentioning it. It's now only getting into his brain, right?
Yes,
It's amazing Carlos's obtuseness. Is incredibly blocked, right? And Bina, this also in terms of what we were saying about communication, right? Nine
yes.
years.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, all right, Carlos isn't there every day, yeah. But I mean, in terms of sharing, yes. And this is Carlos paying attention to Don Juan, at least, but his attention was misdirected, right? So we just have to realize that, some things are difficult because you're caught in a bubble, and that's just the issue with Carlos. He's caught in this bubble, right? It's fantastic. Anyway, please continue, Beena.
Okay. My benefactor said that when a person embarks on the paths of sorcery, they become aware in a gradual manner that ordinary life has been forever left behind. That knowledge is indeed a frightening affair. Indeed. Yes. You were saying something,
Yeah.
please.
No, I'm just emphasizing that this point that he's making here, that in a gradual manner. Now, I think in Way of Impeccability, that gradualness comes rather suddenly. Yes. And in our sharing also, as we've seen with those we've shared to, yes, they become aware that ordinary life has been forever left behind.
Yes.
This is a very, very, very big deal and leads to worldview collapse because you realize that, well, like you said, that knowledge or learning is a frightening affair. Yeah, it's frightening because it collapses your world. Everything that you know suddenly starts to go away. Everything that you trusted, your perception of yourself, your understanding of your relation in yourself, your value in the world, how you fit into the world, all that goes away. And suddenly you out there, I call it in the void. And you've got to go through the void. And a nice equivalence of this is to say, well, you got to put on a new skin. And in order to put on a new skin, you've got to take off the old one first. Right? It's not something you can do partially, at least for the analogy. You have to take your own skin off completely and then put on the new skin. But when you have no skin, of course, all your nerves are exposed and you're very raw and vulnerable and awkward and uncomfortable. Right? And scary. Right? That's when you let go of the old world, and it happens despite you wanting to do anything about it, right? Like Don Juan says, you become aware that ordinary life has forever left behind. This is very, very important, and that's that going through the void. But when we are aware of it, we can know it and go through it deliberately, and then you don't get so, and you don't back away. Oh, this is scary. It's meant to be, right? In a way, it doesn't have to be. You can go through the void without super stress of it. It's not fun, it's not pleasant, but it's like taking medication. When you do it willingly, unpleasant medication, which, you know, Beena had shared some things with me, it's all like, seriously, man, this stuff is really awful. But when you do it willingly, it's not that bad, right? It changes things. So when we do this willingly, it's much better, right?
Okay, okay. It was just to make it, just to give a like okay, right, a clarification there. That awful thing was not awful. It was a discussion that okay, something happened, and then
Oh no,
we
I
had
meant
these.
this was awful. The Safi.
Oh yes, okay, okay.
Yeah, it's a
It is
tonic of
awful.
some kind. I guess that would be the word to say. Yeah,
Oh, yes.
but I don't mind it. I don't really mind it.
What they call I don't know. They have a word like connoction, something like that. It's like a
Yeah,
herbal.
concoction, but a tonic.
Yes,
The
concoction.
appropriate word for it is a tonic. Yeah, concoction
Okay,
is
okay.
maybe a little bit of a not so nice way of calling it tonic, but that's what it is. Technically, it's a tonic. Yeah.
Oh,
Anyway.
okay. Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a thing. Anyway, what I still how many times have you read before this book of Carlos, this specific one, this second book?
Ah, I don't know, dozens probably.
Okay.
I don't know,
So I cannot.
more than a dozen for sure. I mean, I've read the whole series about a dozen times, but this particular one, well, at least this passage, certainly dozens of times. Because look now, I do this when I originally read it, and every time I reread the book, I go over it again and again and again and again. Yeah, so till it
Okay.
becomes mine. Till it becomes mine, till I'm no longer reading what Don Juan says. And that's why I'm able to now comment on, at least when I first read that, the very first time, I'm like, okay, I believe you, seeing and being a warrior are, two separate things. But now I see it in a very different way. He's saying it to Carlos, right? And Carlos didn't understand that. So it's a miscommunication from Carlos's point of view because he's not getting that Don Juan is saying that. So he doesn't make a note here to say, oh, this isn't actually accurate. It's accurate for me at the time. So anyway, well, your question, you were saying how many times? Lots and lots, right?
Okay, so
Again, like I
okay,
said, listen.
because I asked you just to make sure that you cannot miss. Of course, it is very unlikely that you are going to miss anything important, but I was just making sure that okay, you have read this many times, and once,
Oh yeah.
never, one time you mentioned this in this particular way to me when I was saying that okay, I still miss my friends and I still want to have that life where
Yeah.
never mentioned that okay, like it's a frightening affair indeed, the knowledge. Okay, I don't have a
It
knowledge
doesn't
like
have to be a frightening affair, Beena. And that's
yes,
Moreness culture. See, that's what we're bringing in.
but
Frightening affair
also
is superiority paradigm logic. In Moreness culture, it's not a frightening affair, but it's an awesome, enlivening affair because we are doing it willingly. We love learning and growing. And we don't have this ego that says, oh my God, I don't know anymore. No. See, so we change it from frightening into fantastic. Yeah, we change it. That's why I never brought this point up specifically. But I did bring up the point about the regular world no longer being there for us in the same way, right? That we are different. Anyway,
okay.
yeah, yeah. It's all about appropriateness, Bina, as appropriate. We are on a path where we are enthralled, is the right word. We are enthralled by the daily learning and growing. We love it. It's fantastic. It is why we do the lives. We're sharing our personal path of learning and growing together. I'm not teaching Bina. We are learning together. Yes, I may share my understandings, but it's not Bina must just accept it. Oh, hell no. And Bina cannot do this. Her receptivity will not allow it. She's going to think it through and discuss and come back like now, right? And we learn, right? We learn. And through this, you re-entrench, you re-practice, you reaffirm your own understanding, your own learning, and you check it. You check it every time, right? So it's a big deal. It's a very big deal what we do. And again, it's not frightening because it's Moreness culture. Learning and growing is not a frightening affair. That's superiority paradigm, right? So we shift things. We shift things. Yeah. We're taking things further, Bina. Taking things further. In Don Juan's world, yes. And in Carlos's world, for Carlos, it's very frightening. Again, purpose-driven communication. In Don Juan, where he's at, he doesn't see it as frightening any longer. Make sense,
Hmm.
Peter?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Purpose driven, right? He's saying this to Carlos. He's not saying it to us. He's saying this to Carlos, right? Yeah. And also, he's looking to leverage Carlos a little bit. And he uses fear to leverage Carlos because it does work on Carlos. Yeah. It wouldn't work on us. We'll just say, wow, if that's that frightening, it's like, why do I want to bother with this? There are other ways of doing it. I'll go a different path rather. Yeah. See? In our path, moreness appeals to us, always has. Yes, so we are drawn rather than pushed. Yes, we are pulled by moreness. Carlos needs to be pushed by fear. Make sense?
Yes, yes.
All right,
Okay, I'm
let's read
reading it
again,
again.
Lee.
Yes, my
Yeah,
benefactor said that when a man embarks on the paths of
a
sorcery,
person.
sorry, a person. My benefactor said that when a person embarks on the paths of sorcery, they become aware in a gradual manner that ordinary life has been forever left behind, that knowledge is indeed a frightening affair, that the means of the ordinary world are no longer a buffer for him, and that's for them, and that they must adopt a new way of life if they are going to survive. The first thing they ought to do at the point is to want to become a warrior, a very important step and decision. The frightening nature of knowledge leaves one no alternative but to become a warrior. By the time knowledge
Now, now, now,
becomes a frightening
I do have
affair.
to, I have to just interject there, Beena, right? And also, I think
Yes.
another change that we want to make, instead of saying sorcery, we can just say knowledge or learning, right? Or the path of moreness. Actually, that's really a better word, right? On the paths of
Mm.
moreness. Yeah? We'll change it a little bit because sorcery has so much baggage to it. And Don Juan later says, I only use sorcery because I don't really have a better word for it. Yeah. So he shifts and he uses the word seers later on, right? Which is, like wizard kind of, right? But moreness is a better term. Anyway, uh, in the sorcery world specifically, there's a particular alternate reality that Don Juan has mentioned. There are many different alternate realities, many different worlds. But in the sorcery world specifically, right, where Don Juan says, oh, a Brujo goes there and, his soul could be captured and all of this stuff. That's a very frightening world, which is again precisely why I emphasize getting your warriorness first established. Because when you get your impeccability and way of impeccability and you have complete clarity of intent, as Don Juan also himself says, that whole path through the sorcery world, which happens to have been what he learned, later he says it's not necessary. There's no real need for it. It's just, back in the day it was useful. Now not. So it can just be avoided. But if you don't have this awareness that there are frightening aspects to reality, not to knowledge, to reality, that's a different means. In our world, it's part of moreness is to understand the lessness of the superiority paradigm. You need it because if you don't, you make yourself vulnerable. Yeah. So in the same way, we need to understand this nonsense, but we understand it by a superiority paradigm. That whole sorcerer world, very specifically sorcerer world, corn magic and enemies and all of this stuff. This is all superiority paradigm nonsense, and we just want to avoid it entirely, right? We don't even want to be able to deal with it. No, the best way to not to deal with the BMN is to avoid it. And it's the same thing with black holes, right? And in the book that I wrote about this, I call it black hole psychology. We have to understand that you cannot love a black hole better. There's nothing you can do to a black hole to make it not to be a black hole, except avoid it. The only way to get the black hole to collapse is to stop feeding it. Yeah. Stop feeding it energy, data, information, anything, right? Which means do not interact with it because interaction is feeding it, right? It's like the trolls. Don't feed the trolls. Black holes are trolls. Same thing. Trolls are black holes. Same thing. That whole sorcery path is a kind of a black hole, right? We're not going to feed it. We're not going to feed it. And likewise, when people take power plants, they inadvertently find themselves in that hole. I have personal friends who went into it, and they went on retreats and weekends and guide and all of this, right, to go engage into the spirit world. And quite a few of them experienced very, very negative physical effects. Like the one, they were paralyzed, and there was this being there was like sucking stuff out of them, and they managed to break free, but it was very clear that they were sucking their energy, right? And my friend was debilitated. They were physically impaired for a long while after that, right? Physically, not just psychologically or emotionally, but physically, right? It took them a long time to recover. In other words, be careful of what you do, right? And this recommendations of people, they just, oh, go and take this, go and take that. Uh, just because most people go through it and don't have a problem doesn't mean it's not dangerous. It's like going out into the wilderness, right? Yeah, I can go walk in the wilderness and not encounter a bear or a wolf or whatever, right? A predator. But it also does happen that people do go out there and they're unprepared to deal with the bear, and they do get killed out in nature, right? Because they're unprepared. That's the point I'm making. Don't go and mess about in things that you're unprepared for. Yeah. Because you may get lucky and not have it, which is okay. Oh, nature's wonderful. Yes, it is, but not if you're unprepared. And you may be lucky, and 99% of the time you are, but the 100th time will kill you. Yeah? So it's important here. Important to understand. People make all these recommendations for alternate reality entries and experiences. It's like going out into the nature, but they don't really adequately have you prepared. And the only way to truly be prepared is to be a spirit warrior, is to be applying way of impeccability. Then you'll be prepared. That's the only way to prepare, right? You don't know specifically. It's not like a bear which you can prepare for. You need to prepare for the unknown. You need to prepare for negativity. You need to prepare for things that want to eat you. Yeah, like my friend. Yeah, I wanted to eat her energy. Yeah, frightening stuff, right? Again, you don't have to do that. Yes, you can stay and progress on your path of learning without necessarily putting yourself in danger. And if you do have to do it, then be absolutely prepared as best you can. All right, please read again, Beena. Important stuff coming up here, right? Yeah,
Okay. By the time knowledge becomes this from here.
yeah, sure, sure.
Okay.
Oh, well,
By the time knowledge.
I guess, and the next one, the first thing he ought to do, or they ought to do, yeah, from there.
Okay. A man who follows the path of sorcery is confronted with no, but this one you read this one?
No, I know we didn't read the end of the my benefactor. Just
Okay,
read from there
okay,
again. From yeah.
okay. My benefactor said that when a person embarks on the path of perceiving, they
Moreness.
become aware. Okay,
Oh, okay.
the path.
Perceiving works
Yeah,
too.
the path.
Yeah, but Moreness
Okay,
really, it's the parts of
okay. The
Moreness.
path of moreness, they become aware in a gradual manner that ordinary life has been forever left behind. That knowledge is indeed a frightening affair. That the means of the ordinary world are no longer a buffer for him, and that for them, and that they must adopt a new way of life if they are going to survive. The first thing they ought to do at the point is to want to become a warrior, a very important step and decision. The frightening nature of knowledge leaves one no alternative but to become a warrior. By the time knowledge becomes a frightening affair, the person also realizes that death is the irrepressible partner that sits next to him on the mat. Every bit of knowledge that becomes power has death as its central force. Death lends the ultimate touch, and whatever is touched by death indeed becomes power. Wow.
And let's leave
Um.
it right there, Bina. Let's leave it right there for
Okay.
today, and then
Okay.
we'll continue with this from tomorrow because there's more, and
Mm-hmm.
I want to leave it on this point of death lends its ultimate touch, and whatever is touched by death indeed becomes power, which changes when we think that through to the end. It changes your perception on death. Death is not something to be feared and avoided, but something that is a benefit to us, right? Because death is going to give us that touch of power if done appropriately, of course. If you're approaching it via way of impeccability, if you go into it all fearful, no. Now you have a negative intent towards it, and you're going to cancel out any potential benefits, right? So we're basically going to be in philosophy of opposite. We're going to turn death completely upside down, at least our perception of death. Very, very, very powerful and very important. Yes, Beena?
Yes. Yes.
Very powerful stuff. I love this. This is real moreness to me. Yeah. And I like calling this,
Exactly.
instead of the sorcery path or the seer's
Exactly.
path or even the warrior's path, in the totality, what Don Juan is about moreness. Even though it doesn't want use this term, right, and this conception, but still it's about moreness. So we'll change that as well. Right? Very cool. Very cool. Very cool.
Yes. Okay, so
Very
wrapping it
cool.
up. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Whoever joined us on TikTok, Instagram, and will join us on YouTube or will watch us on Facebook also in the group Sassy. You can find all the recordings there available, as well as on Substack, and also some more which I interestingly never mentioned that. Okay, but I will practice that to mention every platform we are utilizing to share moreness. And just before going again, as always, I like to say that it's just a reminder and I always try to keep it as gentle as I can, that please pay attention to your algorithms. Uh, yes, online
Yeah.
algorithm and life algorithm. They are
Yeah.
actually the same, they work in the same manner. When you pay attention to your online algorithm, you not only train that, but also you get attuned with the universe, because universe works in the same manner for your life. So whenever wherever you are going to pay attention, it is going to be maximized by the universe. Universe is just give you that power whenever you are focusing on something, paying attention to. Universe just say that, oh, this is something you are interested in, let's make it,
Mm.
maximize it for you, magnify it for you. It happens same in the life also. So please do pay attention to your online algorithm. Wherever you find some value, such goodness, just leave your mark
Very
there
important. Very
by
important.
clicking
Very
like,
important.
or leaving a comment or subscribing, because you are sending a message to universe that I am
Yeah.
deliberate about my choices. I am making it not just okay randomly watching it. I'm making my deliberate choice to have value and goodness in my life and richness. I want more character in my life itself. Not
Yeah.
only in myself, but life
Yeah.
itself. I want more character, more depth. And
Exactly.
this is something,
Exactly.
yes, you have
More
to make deliberate
moreness.
choice about. Exactly, the moreness. And because
Yeah.
ultimately it is going to affect your life. This is the
Yeah.
first step,
Yeah. Yeah.
and the next step will come, and you will see more appropriate things in your life. Please do pay
Yeah.
attention to, because attention is the new currency.
There you
Spend
go.
it
There
wisely.
you go.
Spend
There
it
you go.
wisely. Thank you so
Bye
much for
bye.
joining us. We will see you guys tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. Bye bye, everybody. Bye bye. Bye bye. Bye bye. Most wonderful, Beena. Most wonderful.